Namaste and welcome to Urban Chatterati. Today I am here with Abhijit Iyer-Mitra to discuss the environmental activism in India in the light of arrest of Disha Ravi and also the non-bailable warrant against Nikita and Shantanu. The news is also coming that before the Republic Day protest, which turned violent, Nikita, Shantanu, and Disha were in a Zoom call or they were in contact with the Dhaliwal, who is a known Khalistani handler in the Canada. So, Vijit, what is happening out here? This entire toolkit thing, which was supposed to be some fun activism and fight against oppression, fight for freedom of expression, is now turning into the nightmare for many people in India. What is happening
Right.
out there?
So there are two issues here. One is the toolkit. The second is the violence that happened on the 26th of January on Republic Day. Right. Now, the connection is that when Greta Thunberg, now remember, Greta Thunberg's Twitter account, is actually operated by this Kerala activist called Adarsh Pratap. Right. This is a known fact. He, of course, has distanced himself from the tweet and from the toolkit tweet specifically. That remains to be seen. But what happened is that the document in question was started by this chap called Mo Dhaliwal, who is on record. There is a Twitter video showing saying that the farm protests are just the beginning, Khalistan is the end goal. Right now, the people in question, Nikita Jacob had the editing rights for the document, and Disha Ravi was one of the people we know who edited the document. Now, from what was shared, we also know that this was the same document that was used as a template for the 26th January events. Even though it was tweeted after the 26th January events, the editing hadn't been done completely, so there were traces still of the 26th January events on there. Now, what has happened since then is that you have a arrest warrant that's been put out for these people, Nikita, Disha Ravi, who has already been arrested, and a gentleman. I don't think it proves the necessary collusion required, because if Mo Dhaliwal was the person controlling it, it's like this. This is Mo Dhaliwal. This is the toolkit. He might have asked people to update the toolkit and so on and so forth. But then we also know Mo Dhaliwal, according to the Delhi police, started the Delhi violence, which is here. Now you have a connection that goes like this. I am not seeing anything that directly connects these people to the violence that happened on the 26th. So that will be the real thing to prove. Now, I just want to point out that when the MEA came out with that statement after Rihanna tweeted, um, the foreign minister said that he had intelligence of certain global coordination happening, and that is why he put out the statement on the MEA's official Twitter handle. Now, remember, intelligence is not the same as evidence. What you deem intelligence for proactive action cannot be produced in court, and very frequently won't doesn't meet the evidentiary standards of court. So you have some very different things out here. There were many things that could have been done even before arrest. You know, the problem in this country is we have arrest just for investigation. We don't have arrest after investigation. You have arrest during investigation. There are a lot of cyber tools also they could have run, such as diagnostics and things to see where Nikita Jacob came in, where Disha Ravi came in, because you know all Google Docs have a history of who edited them, and Google has already said that they are going to cooperate with the government in investigating this. So let's see what happens.
Yes, but this kind of protest, which is now being mainstreamed as fashionable, that you join a flash mob protesting at the embassy of India, which those protests often are joined by non-Indians, they are joined by Pakistanis, they're joined by extremist elements like Khalistanis, and they often do violence. They also beat up the pro-India people out there. So I don't think calling for maybe people think this was just a non-violent dissent, but calling for flash mobs to gather and attack Indian embassy or waging economic warfare against India. Because remember, the toolkit was basically calling for warfare against India, economic warfare,
Mm.
boycotting Indian companies, boycotting Indian government, by demonizing them. I think is there a crime out there, or is it can't be persecuted under any law, or let's
Look,
say we
I
can't.
don't know, other than the law of defamation, I don't know what you can actually do about economic warfare. There isn't a single specific clause about economic warfare against India. And, generally, I'm very loath to use things like BDS and things, calling them economic warfare as such, becomes very dangerous. For me, it is the only thing that you can arrest for is violence, right? Specific threats against a specific target. There wasn't that in the toolkit, so it does not meet the Brandenburg principle of incitement. Of course, in India, we have the own Indian variable incitement standard, right? Uh, IVIS. Let's call it that, Indian variable incitement standard, because it varies from the time of the day, from court to court, from the seniority of the court to what the judge had for breakfast or did not have for breakfast. So that becomes highly problematic. That said, there may be a case. The problem is, I don't see a case right now, because there was nothing in that particular toolkit that clearly indicated violence. Was it then used by Mo Dhaliwal to make his chaps get violent, or see to it they become violent? Possibly, yes. We still don't have a clear connection between Mo Dhaliwal and the events of the 26th of January, right? Has he been declared a terrorist? I don't think so.
No,
Because
no,
remember,
he's
even
not.
people like Jagmeet Singh of the NDP, they used to. He has an OCI card or something. They used to keep coming to Delhi and Amritsar on very regularly once upon a time, right? So I don't see how this works out unless you're going to frame charges against Mo Dhaliwal. Uh, for me, it's fundamentally untenable, because the only connection I'm seeing here is Mo Dhaliwal. Until you frame charges out against him, I think this is more of a fishing expedition to intercept and see what was the communications between Mo Dhaliwal and these people, and see what was the level of um involvement out there. At the same time, it's also a bit worrying, because if you have to arrest these people in order to find out, then it also means that you don't have intelligence on how Mo Dhaliwal sparked off 26 January. Uh, Generally, the level of a forensic investigation is extremely low, and that is always problematic.
Yes, Abhijit. So we don't know much about the case and what are the charges, so we can't really comment on that. Let the courts decide. This is all we can say. But coming to this kind of environmental activism which we're seeing today, what's your take on it? Because I don't know what this girl has ever done for environment apart from maybe raising some crazy slogans or making some posters. I don't see any work being done by these kind, and not just her. These kind of environmental activists, they only live on the NGO money, and they take a for project activity for the sake of it because they do something. So, what's your take?
So the way the NGO business works is, if something is 1% of a problem, in order to work in that sector, you have to show that it's 98% of the problem. Okay. So if say climate change is going to kill us in about 100 years time, you have to say that climate change is going to kill us tomorrow. That is only You have to be that hyperbolistic to get funds, right? And I guess that fits a standard pattern of all NGO workers seeking funding, which is what Disha Ravi does. But that is how the NGO sector works, right? So there's nothing, and especially the video that was shared on Twitter yesterday, I've not seen anything particularly incriminating out. In fact, I've seen nothing incriminating out there. She's bad mouthing India. She's bad mouthing the BJP, which is perfectly fine. I mean, there's nothing out there that was violent. I think it all came within the ambit of freedom of speech. And one particularly revealing thing is that her parents are both BJP supporters. So, yeah.
So is it some kind of extended youth rebellion,
I think so.
teenage rebellion?
Yeah. I think it's youth rebellion, and let's be careful about youth rebellion. It's just the stupidity of youth. I don't think uh, these people, just like that girl Leonie, who poor thing who got arrested. You remember for saying, "I want Indo-Pakistan peace" or something like that at
No.
Asaduddin Owaisi's rally.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That
Yeah,
Kerala girl apparently.
yeah. So it was. I'm like, what are you arresting them for? That poor thing spent 3 months in jail for saying we should have peace with, I am Pakistani, I want peace with Pakistan or something like that. You can't arrest people for that, boss. So, I'm very, very incredulous about this case out here.
But what you have said is a very pertinent point that these NGOs, whether they are environmental NGOs or they are human rights NGOs, so the reason they go out and paint a very negative picture of India because their funds depend on it. So they have to continuously keep saying India is now a fascist country and the rights of everyone is being suppressed. So we have seen the farmers' protest has now become everything and anything except the farmers' issue. So is
Correct.
the gender justice protest, is the climate protest, is the social justice protest, it's what not. So how do you see this kind of woke activism in India? Look, we are seeing a real problem, at least in the metropolitan centers of India, of this woke generation.
I quite enjoy it, I must say, because I like watching stupid people making a fool of themselves. So I personally think that wokes are more funny than most of our mainstream so-called comedians today. So I personally enjoy it a lot, and I enjoy it even more in India because in India nobody takes them seriously. Unlike the West, where they've kind of captured the policy space, in India they're treated like the junk that they are. So it's it's do you remember that Sikh comedian? He died. He was a brilliant comedian. um I forget his name. There was a brilliant Sikh comedian. He used to run a show on Doordarshan as well, and he died very
Jaspal
young.
Jaspal Bhatti.
Jaspal Bhatti, that's right.
Bhatti.
And he used to have this thing called Mahamurkh Divas. Right? He used to hold a festival called Mahamurkh Divas. So with Vokes, I find that every day is Mahamurkh Divas. And everything is kind of uh, the issue was, of course, that Jaspal Bhatti knew he was being funny. These guys don't know they're being funny, which actually makes it funnier.
But no, this arrest of Disha Ravi is actually a warning for all those students who are in the college and who think that they are fighting some great battle for the future of democracy, or they're in middle of some Devasur Sangram, that you have to go on the street and fight against the fascism and uproot the fascism.
Mm.
I think this is also, it also serves as a warning to those people that look, nothing is going to change because you can scream in the CA protest, and all you will end up doing is destroying your own life. And if you really believe that India is a fascist country, that, sorry, you can't be taking it so lightly as to jumping on the street every now and then.
Absolutely. Now, see, the thing here is, it's more than just deterring them. I think sending out messages like deterrence goes down a very dangerous path. That said, I think the only realistic case that you can make against Disha Ravi is that for you to continue with that slogan, farmer genocide, after the events of 26 January, knowing the kind of emotions it stirred up that led to over 100 people getting injured, including 300 policemen, you can say that for any reasonable person to continue on that path was pouring fuel on fire, right? Now, as for the deterrent effect, so many people have been arrested. Kanhaiya Kumar spent a day in jail. Umar Khalid is still in jail. Shaila Rashid was kept under house arrest during lockdown. Did you see anything come of it? Nothing, no? I think the point of youth is to be stupid, to think you can conquer it all. So I don't think it has a deterrent effect per se.
Mhm. But coming to a more serious point, Abhijit, we see this sustained campaign against India in the international media, in the international academia, and now they're targeting Indian companies, specific Indian companies, especially let's say the Reliance. The moment Reliance comes out with a 5G plan for India, suddenly you see the Reliance is under attack, and we can't ignore it, even if we like Reliance or we don't like Reliance. But Reliance is under sustained attack from all the media houses suddenly. Do you see this something more sinister is going on in the background?
Look, in my experience, this kind of coordination is virtually impossible. All right. The messaging here seems to be quite consistent. It's a sign of the times, of the kind of division social media brings out, because in social media it's only black and white. There's no room for nuance in 280 characters, right? But what I'm personally seeing these chaps do is that somebody has put it into their head that corporate houses are bad, and these corporate houses in India, remember, don't give two hoots for wokeism. Unlike in America, where these companies have basically employed wokes just to shut them up. And now, of course, the wokes control the boat. It's like giving the keys of the madhouse over to the inmates. That's what's happened in Google. That's what's happened in Apple. That's what's especially happened in Twitter. But in India, if you go and say, go to Mukesh Ambani and say, um, I believe that I'm not a man, I'm not a woman, I'm not even a intersex person. I'm the copper wire that resides inside a plastic casing, and you have to have a quota for copper wire inside plastic casing in your employment roster. Mukesh Ambani will slap you. His guards will then slap you. His PA will slap you. The entire building will slap you. The whole of Antila, 52 floors of it will slap you because before you get kicked out of the door. In Google, they will actually find a place for you and probably make you vice president. In Twitter, there is no conclusive evidence that Jack Dorsey already isn't a copper wire inside a plastic casing, asexual being. So all of this becomes highly problematic. So this is basically an attempt by Indian vokes to blackmail corporate houses into giving them jobs. Do you remember that boy Pramanik or whatever that got kicked out of Mahindra by the HR manager, and then he threw a tantrum about it on Twitter, and got the HR manager fired for threatening him. By the way, he had absolutely no proof that he was threatened or intimidated in any way. He
Hmm.
claimed he was. And then he went to Accenture, and in Accenture, apparently his performance was just as bad.
Hmm.
This is the kind of thing that third raters do, that when they can't perform at their jobs or they can't get jobs, they start blackmailing corporate houses. This is one agenda. The second agenda is Rahul Gandhi's agenda, which is that none of these houses, Adani and Ambani, are not giving these houses money, the INC money. So it's getting very, very problematic for them. So they're, trying to go and attack corporate houses to get more money. Then you have the China angle. And the China angle is that you basically have to, uh, uh, that you can see as sabotage in a sense, right? So it's basically many, many different kinds of what do you call it? Many different agendas coming together.
Yes, but that is a dangerous trajectory. If your corporates like Reliance, which is such a large corporate house, which does so much for India in the sense, you might again you disagree or you agree, I don't care. But the point is you can't ignore Reliance and you can't take down Reliance, which has basically changed the lives of so many millions of people in this country. So how do these corporate houses now deal with this kind of threat coming towards them, especially this wokeism? Because there's a real threat that at least the corporate houses based in the urban centers, let's say the metropolitan centers, as the demographics are changing now, they might go the same way as the American corporates in order to be more accommodative and all those things. So how do they shield wall against this very destructive force, wokeism? And you see, works are only stupid. I say stupid people are the one who burn people on the stakes.
Basically, they're trash, desperate to uh, they're the garbage you throw into the compost bin that thinks it's actually caviar. Now caviar also smells bad. The problem is not everything that stinks is caviar, right? Uh, so uh, th- they're basically the garbage that think they're caviar. Now the thing is, they will never be relevant to India because they have no political clout. Remember, they haven't organized as a vote bank in any sense, so they don't have political clout, so they're never going to get this kind of representation in the Indian corporate sector. That thankfully is a good thing for the time being. The thing about vokery in India is it doesn't have the political power, it doesn't have the representation in industry to gain political power. It's not going anywhere right now. I don't think it is a threat to the Indian corporate sector as of now. And I think, especially after what's happened so far, corporate India, far from being accommodative of these people, is actually going to be extremely suspicious of these people and keep them at arm's length.
Hmm. And we are seeing that so many people are being thrown out of the job for making these kind of comments, like we have seen in the case of Ghana as well, that woke girl who was abusing Hindus and Hindu deities left, right, and center, thinking that is somehow this is very cool, right? So, are we going to see more of such things in the coming days? More and more woke people being shown the door from the respectable corporate houses of India?
Yes and no, because remember, Vokes have this sort of tie in with the old ecosystem. The old ecosystem are the landlords of feudal Europe, and the Vokes are the mobs that used to go around on pogroms.
Hmm.
That's the modern day analogy. Now the thing is, they still have a certain kind of power, like you saw with that Pramanik boy who got kicked out of Mahindra and then out of Accenture as well. That there's a certain left wing resonance. The moment he complains, all the left wing will go gaga over him. And after Mahindra, he did manage to land that job at Accenture. Don't forget that. Now, what follows from here is, do they have the coercive ability to sustain it? And in the case of people like Tanzila who got kicked out, they clearly don't, right? That if a corporate sets its mind to it, it's not going to stand by it. You've seen people like DP Goyal at Zomato try these woke stunts, and the backlash against them was so bad that they've just shut up now. They don't try these stunts anymore.
What DP Goyal and all?
DP Goyal and Zomato, he was saying, oh, so it was some vegetarian guy who only wanted a Hindu to deliver food to him and things like that. Now, all he had to do was say, no, we won't.
Hmm.
But to then use the private information of this person, tweet it out, and make a publicity statement of it. First of all, that in itself is a violation. It's a violation of somebody's privacy to be doing shit like that. He did it, and he got such a bad backlash, he's just kept quiet on Twitter since a very long time now.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think the good thing here is that, unlike America, where wokeism now controls the establishment, here the push back to corporate vokery is so great that you will suffer if your management turns woke.
Hmm. Yes, so I think that's a safety guard we have in this country, and perhaps we need to reinforce it. And especially, I think the corporate should be told that you do not need to play to this gallery of very loud, screaming people who call them
Absolutely.
activists, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that should be now becoming part of the management studies in India, at least the MBA studies in India. But coming to the final point, how do you see this farmers protest now unfolding, because this farmers protest has now become everything under the sun? It's even a climate justice fight. So what do you think is going to happen?
I'm afraid my prognosis isn't very good. The government prognosis seems to be it's just going to die out. I suspect actually going to we're going to see more spasms of violence. Now you remember in our chats, not on YouTube, albeit during the Delhi riots last year. Do you remember told you when Selampur happened and Selampur turned into Jamia Millia, which turned into Shaheen Bagh? Or was it Jamia Millia that turned into Selampur that turned into Shaheen Bagh? I told you if this wasn't crushed, we're going to see violence. And sure enough, the Delhi riots happened. You still didn't do anything. Ultimately, it was COVID that got rid of Shaheen Bagh for you, right? This is the same thing that is going to happen with these. I had been predicting violence well before. You can go look at my tweets. I'd been predicting these farmers' protests are going to get violent. The moment we saw them blockade, I knew it was going to get violent. The first spasm we saw was the uprooting of telephone towers that they did and then got stopped. And the only reason they stopped was because they realized it wasn't Reliance Jio. Reliance Jio had sold it to a Canadian company. So all their jihadi funders, jihadi Khalistani funders said, "No, no, 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 don't do this. We own shares in it, so you can't do this." And then, the government again sat and twiddled its thumbs and did nothing. And I was still predicting violence. And then you had the 26/11 violence. They now think it is controlled because they managed to stave off the Chakka Jam or whatever it was. It is not controlled. Okay, you are going to see more and more violence unless you crush this now. Okay,
Hmm.
the harm to your reputation that comes from crushing this, the longer you postpone the crushing, the greater the harm that's going to come to your so-called reputation. I really don't know what reputation you're defending out here, but the longer this goes on, the greater the damage to your reputation.
Hmm. Okay, so that's not really looking good, but let's hope for the best. I think there will be some solution which will be uh, arrived at by both the Kisan union leaders and also the government. But thank you, Vijit, for talking to us and hoping to see you soon once again. Jai Shri Ram, comrade.
Well, well, very well.
And thank you, audience, for listening to us. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. We also have the membership program, so please do join it. Thank you.